The desert dusk settled like a heavy blanket across the Arizona plains, its last traces of sun sinking behind jagged red cliffs. Luke Maddox tightened the reins on his weary mare and rode the final stretch toward his ranch. The wind carried the dry scent of rain, rare, bitter, and always a warning. Storms in the desert didn't arrive gently. They attacked. By the time Luke reached his porch, thunder had begun to grumble across the sky, rolling like distant cannon fire. He wiped the sweat from his brow, pushed open the creaky door, and set his hat on the peg inside. It was shaping up to be one hell of a night, the kind where even coyotes hid in their dens. He had barely reached for the kettle when a sudden, desperate pounding rattled the front door. Not a polite knock, not even close. It was the kind of knock that came from someone standing 1 inch from death. Luke froze. Nobody visited him out here. Not at night. Not in this weather. His hand slid to the rifle leaning against the wall. He held it low but ready. He wasn't a man who welcomed trouble, but trouble always seemed to find lonely places like his. When he slowly unlatched the door and opened it a crack, lightning split the sky, illuminating a figure standing on his porch. A woman. She looked like she had crawled out of the storm itself. Her long black hair, braided in the Apache style, clung wet against her cheeks. Her clothing was torn, dust-covered, and soaked. Scratches ran across her arms. Her breath came in sharp, uneven bursts. Lightning flashed again, and he saw her eyes clearly, dark, wild, and full of terror so real it sent a chill through him. She lifted her hands slowly, palms open, showing she carried no weapon. "Please," she whispered through trembling lips, her voice barely carrying over the rising wind. "It might be my last day alive. Can I stay for one night? Just one." Luke's grip on the rifle tightened. He had lived long enough on the frontier to know that fear like hers didn't come from getting lost or spooked by the storm. Someone, or something, had chased her. He scanned the darkness behind her, searching for movement, shadows, mounted silhouettes. Nothing yet. But he knew better than to trust what he couldn't see. The woman swayed, grabbing the doorframe to steady herself. She looked like a strong person pushed far beyond her limits, driven by fear, exhaustion, and the raw instinct to survive. Finally Luke stepped back and opened the door fully. "Get inside," he said, his voice low, but firm. "Before the storm kills you first." She hesitated, not because she didn't want shelter, but because she feared bringing danger to his door. He could see it in her eyes. She was used to protecting others, not asking for help. But she staggered in, and Luke shut the door behind her, bolting it with a solid metal latch. She moved toward the fire like a wolf seeking warmth after days in the cold, her body shaking violently. Luke set the rifle aside but kept it within reach. "What's your name?" he asked. It took her a moment to catch her breath. Her voice cracked when she answered. "Nita." He nodded. "I'm Luke Maddox." Her eyes flickered around the small cabin, taking in the single cot, the wooden table, the tools hanging on the wall. "I didn't want to come here," she said, shivering. "But they're close. And I don't want to die out there." Luke felt the hairs on his neck rise. "Who's after you?" Nita's lips trembled. "My tribe." He stiffened. Apache matters were something even seasoned soldiers avoided. They were proud people, fiercely protective of their own. If they wanted someone dead, that person rarely survived. Luke kept his voice even. "Why would your people want to kill you?" Lightning flashed again, this time showing a streak of fear across her face so raw it twisted something inside him. She inhaled sharply, tears glimmering. "Because I refused something," she said, her voice breaking. "Refused a fate no woman should be forced to accept." She looked into his eyes with a plea so deep it felt like a knife in his chest. "And they won't stop until my blood pays for it." Thunder boomed, shaking the windows. And as Luke stared at the terrified woman before him, he realized the storm outside was nothing compared to the one she had brought to his doorstep. Nita's story flowed like a broken river, stopping, sputtering, then rushing forward again as her strength wavered. Before she could finish, her knees buckled beneath her. Luke lunged forward and caught her just before she hit the wooden floor. Her body felt far too light, like that of someone who had gone too long without food or rest. He lifted her gently, carrying her to the long, worn-out couch near the hearth. The fire's orange glow flickered across her exhausted face as he eased her down. Her breathing was uneven, her skin burned with fever, and sweat glistened at her temples. Luke placed a hand on her ankle, the swelling was unmistakable. She must have run miles through thorn, brush, and jagged stone, pushed far beyond human limits. Luke grabbed a clean cloth, soaked it in cool water, and pressed it to her forehead. She flinched at first, then relaxed, eyes fluttering closed. "When did you last eat?" he asked, voice low. Her lips trembled before she whispered, "I don't know. Perhaps 2 days. Maybe more." Luke cursed under his breath. No wonder she could barely stand. A body couldn't outrun death on an empty stomach. He opened the pot hanging near the fire, a simple stew of beans, venison, and potatoes. He ladled some into a tin bowl and placed it in her trembling hands. She stared at the food as if unsure it was real. "Go on," he urged. "Eat slow." Nita lifted a spoonful to her lips. Her hands shook, but she ate, carefully, painfully, every bite. Her eyes glistened when she swallowed the first mouthful. "You're kind," she murmured. "I thought the desert had no kindness left." Luke sat beside her on a wooden stool, arms folded, watching the shadows dance across the walls. "Kindness ain't rare," he said. "Just hard to reach." Silence settled for a moment, broken only by the crackling wood and the storm moaning outside. Then Nita spoke again, voice barely more than a whisper. "I didn't run because I was weak. I ran because their new war chief, Coda, chose me as his wife." Luke didn't interrupt. He let her speak. She stared into the fire as if reliving the nightmare. "I refused. And in our tradition, a woman may refuse once. But Coda, he does not honor old ways. Power changes a man, turns his heart dark." She swallowed hard. To him, my defiance was rebellion. A challenge. An insult. Luke tightened his jaw. He'd seen men like that on every frontier. Men who believed power meant ownership, that fear was their right, that a woman's voice meant nothing. He poked at the fire, sparks jumping upward. "So he sent men after you?" "Yes," Nita whispered. "Warriors loyal to him. Warriors who believe a woman's choice is a threat to his authority. They hunt me for dishonoring him." Her voice cracked. The pain behind her words wasn't just fear, it was betrayal. She hadn't only lost safety, she'd lost trust in her people. Luke leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You're safe here," he said firmly. Nita shook her head, her gaze sharp despite exhaustion. "No one is safe from Coda. He always finds what he claims is his." Luke stood and walked to the window, lifting the curtain just enough to look out into the darkness. The storm clouds hung heavy, illuminated by occasional flashes of lightning. The land beyond was nothing but wet earth, sagebrush, and unforgiving emptiness. But he didn't need to see them to know the hunters were coming. If she reached his ranch, they were already close. He returned to the table and reached for his rifle. He checked the chamber, loading each cartridge slowly, deliberately. The metallic clicks echoed in the small cabin. "You're not his," he said without looking up. "Not tonight. Not ever again if I have anything to say about it." When he finally glanced at her, Nita was watching him with eyes that held more emotion than words could hold. Relief, sorrow, gratitude, and something deeper forming beneath the surface. But before anything more could be said, a distant sound cut through the pounding rain. A deep, rhythmic thump. Then another. Drums. Luke froze, listening. Nita's hand flew to her mouth, her face draining of color. "No," she whispered. "They've already found me." Luke strode to the door and opened it a crack. Far beyond the boundary of his land, faint orange lights flickered in the darkness, torches moving with purpose. Silhouettes shifted like ghosts across the ridge. Warriors. Apache warriors. They were coming. Luke closed the door, locked it, and inhaled deeply. The storm outside had finally arrived. But the storm heading toward them was far worse. The fire dimmed low, throwing long shadows across the cabin walls. Luke moved through the room with quiet purpose, snuffing out the lamps one by one until only the faint glow of embers remained. Darkness offered cover. Out here, cover meant survival. Nita pushed herself upright on the couch, though every movement made her wince. She clutched his sleeve, fear trembling in her fingers. "You should let me go," she whispered. "If they find me here, you will be the first man they kill." Luke shook his head. "Not happening. You're staying right here." Her eyes filled with a mix of desperation and sorrow. "I don't want your blood spilled for me." Luke knelt beside her, his voice calm but unshakable. "Listen to me. You showed up on my porch scared, starving, hunted, and still you worried about someone else. That tells me everything I need to know. I'm not handing you over. For a moment, Nita simply stared at him, searching his face as if trying to understand why a stranger would risk everything for her. But the moment shattered when a war cry echoed faintly across the land. Hi, piercing, answered by another. The Apache were closer now. Luke grabbed his rifle, strapped on his revolver, and stepped outside onto the porch. The storm had eased to a drizzle, but thunder still growled in the distance. The night smelled of wet earth and smoke. Across the field, torches moved with chilling precision. The warriors formed a half-moon around the ranch, slow, deliberate, surrounding him without haste, like wolves cornering prey. One stepped forward. Even from afar, Luke recognized him, tall, broad-shouldered, with feathers braided into long black hair. His presence alone commanded fear. Coda, the new war chief. The man Nita fled. He raised his arms, and the surrounding warriors fell silent. His voice carried over the plain like rolling thunder. Cowboy, he shouted, you shelter what belongs to us. Send her out, and you live. Keep her inside. He paused, and tonight, your blood will feed the earth. Luke stepped to the edge of the porch, rifle in hand though pointed downward. She's not property, he said. She doesn't want to go with you. Coda lifted his chin. Her choice means nothing. Our way is older than your laws. Luke's voice hardened. Then your way ends at my doorstep. A murmur of anger rippled through the warriors. Coda's eyes narrowed, gleaming with something darker than fury, wounded pride. You dare challenge me. I dare protect. Someone who needs protecting, Luke replied. The standoff stretched across the field like a wire pulled too tight. The rain dripped from the porch roof. The torches flickered. Even the storm seemed to hold its breath. Then Coda moved his hand toward the hatchet at his belt. A tiny motion, deadly enough. Luke fired. The rifle crack split the night like lightning. Chaos erupted. Warriors surged forward from both sides, moving with terrifying speed. Luke fired again, taking down another before diving behind the water trough. Arrows thudded into the wood above him. Inside the cabin, Nita forced herself up, teeth clenched against the pain in her ankle. She dragged herself to the window, heart pounding. Outside, Luke fought like a man with nothing to lose, reloading, firing, ducking behind cover as blades and arrows sliced the air around him. He shouted, Nita, stay down. She didn't listen. She couldn't. She watched the torches closing in, watched a warrior creeping behind the barn, ready to flank Luke. With no weapon but her courage, she grabbed a burning log from the fire pit, ignoring the searing heat through the cloth she wrapped around it. She limped out the back door, breath ragged, and hurled the log into the dry grass. The fire caught instantly, hungry flames racing across the field, creating a wall of orange heat. The warriors halted, shouting warnings. The flames forced them to spread out, breaking their formation. Luke seized the moment, tackling the warrior nearest to him. They rolled in the mud, trading blows until Luke struck him unconscious with the butt of his rifle. Through the flames and chaos, Coda remained standing, fierce, relentless, even as two of his warriors dragged him back, blood streaming from the bullet wound in his shoulder. Fall back, one shouted. Coda resisted until another explosion of fire roared through the field. Finally he retreated, glaring at Luke through the flames with a promise of vengeance. The warriors melted back into the darkness as quickly as they had come, their torches disappearing into the deep night. Luke dropped to his knees, chest heaving, rain mixing with sweat and dirt on his face. The battlefield around him steamed and smoked. Nita limped toward him, tears streaking her cheeks. You fought for me, she whispered, kneeling despite her pain. You saved my life. Luke met her gaze, breathless. You gave me a reason to fight. Gently, she took his hand, squeezing it with trembling fingers. Let me start a new life, somewhere I'm free. If you'll let me stay. Luke's voice softened. You can stay as long as you need. Even if forever. The storm was finally fading, but something new had begun in its place.